Welcome back, Amos.
Thank you very much, Brian, and the humble apologies. The internet has its toll.
That happens with all kinds of new systems, so it's very understandable.
Right.
Yeah. I think at exactly 10 past, we shall start with howsoever many we have. David, I request you to give Vincent Agaba host right so that he can share something.
As it is, Brian, it seems I can still share already.
Okay, already you've been made co-host.
It seems, yes. Thanks.
Yeah, good. You're almost welcome, and the next 2 minutes we shall be starting without fail. we can start.
Brian. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Brian, you start the meeting.
Daphne, please start the meeting.
Brian, sorry about that hiccup. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are all welcome to today's session. And our session is titled The Future Investment Opportunities and Challenges in the Education Sector, led by Alumni 2004. I'll take you quickly through the agenda for today. We are going to start with a prayer, and I'll request Semanda Henry to take us through the prayer. After the prayer, we'll have opening remarks from the UMUA, and then we'll dive in straight into our discussion. After the discussion, we'll have remarks from Brian, who is heading Alumni 2004, and then we'll have closing remarks and a prayer. So let's start with a prayer from Semanda Henry, please. Semanda, are you there to take us through a prayer? If Semanda is not there, can we have a volunteer?
I can volunteer, Madam Moderator. My name is Vincent Agaba. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you that today we are able to be here to discuss such a subject that is very important to our country and to the world at large. It is through education that we end up knowing what is available as we land into this world. And it's because of that we engineer and explore our potential and dare to serve the world. Give us the wisdom, give us the comfort, and may you make us all instruments of peace. We ask you this, Christ our Lord. Amen.
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 Next on our agenda is the opening remarks. And these will be given by Brian, who is representing the UMOA president.
Thank you, members. You are almost welcome to our session of the UMOA reunion. On behalf of the president, I would like to register his apologies. He could not be with us. He has a few commitments, but I was requested to make a few remarks, especially on behalf of UMOA. First, there are several activities that UMOA is undertaking in one way or another. And amongst them is the monthly reunions that we usually have. Several others are ongoing. We have a think tank that is on board. One most important point, we would also want to welcome our new Vice Chancellor, who will be installed early next month, apparently from the news we have. But he has already reported at Uganda Matters University, and he has started making getting to know what is going on with the university. We would like to welcome him with a big warm welcome to Uganda Matters University. We have a website. On this website, we have recordings of the previous reunions. Whenever you visit there, please make sure you register and see what is happening and see what our projects are so far. We have had a few projects, like we have had an amendment in the constitution. We have elections which should be coming one way or another soon. We have several other activities that are ongoing. Please visit our website to see what is happening. Please make sure you acquaint yourself with what is happening. I would like also to introduce some of the members of the executive that we have with us online today. We have Stephen Alinaitwe, who is the secretary for UMUA. We have Vincent Bajire, who is a representative to the UMU management. Is there somebody I could have missed? A few others, many other people could be online, but not on the Zoom link. Some are using the YouTube link. So many may not be seen here, but could be on the other side. So I welcome you all, and please enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I still welcome you all to this session. For those of you who have just joined, our session today is titled Future Investment Opportunities and Challenges in the Education Sector. And year 2004 alumni are the ones leading the session for today. I'll go into introductions. Your moderator for today, my name is Karikaho Dafinrita. I'm a commercial supervisor revenue in Umeme Limited and a mother of 3. I'll straight away go to introduce the keynote speaker for today is Mr. Vincent Agaba, the chairman of the Governing Council of the Real Estate Institute of East Africa. We welcome you, Mr. Agaba Vincent. Our discussant today is Mr. Bona Amos, Chief of Business, Opportunity Bank Uganda Limited. You are welcome, Mr. Amos Bona.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Thank you.
Before we start our session, I'll just outline for you a few ground rules. Attendees, please mute your microphones while the keynote speaker and discussant are speaking. And if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat room that is before the Q&A session. And when we get to the Q&A session, please put up your hand. So with those few remarks, I will request Mr. Agaba Vincent, our keynote speaker, to take the lead today.
Thank you, Moderator. Thank you, Madam Daphna, and the leadership of UMA. I will just share my screen share. I don't know if all of you can see it, members. Ladies and gentlemen, the leadership of Uganda Matters University and the leadership of UMOA, and of course, the moderator and the discussant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity today for me to be here and speak, to be given that opportunity to be a keynote speaker. It is not something that I take for granted, and I appreciate my colleagues to really have confidence in me in that respect. I'm here today in the capacity of the Rwenzori Tourism Academy, and why I do that is because that's our current footprint in the education sector. Yes, I am also involved in the Real Estate Institute of East Africa, which is now about 5 years or so. But of course, that one also has helped me to see what education is, and we are training people in real estate. But this one, particularly Rwenzori Tourism Academy, we're also training people in tourism and hospitality. So the branding and the slide share will reflect more Rwenzori Tourism Academy, but the points will remain the same. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to inform you that education, first and foremost, all of us, we are of who we are because we saw beyond what we came with from our mother's wombs. And that is the education from pre-primary until where we are today. But to give you a background of the Result Tourism Academy, it is an academy to just train in tourism, and our training model is 80% practical and 20% theory. So when we are training a chef, we are saying, cut the onions, make the soup, serve it to the guests, and get feedback. So 80% of the time, people are in the cooking instead of being on a PowerPoint presentation. This is evidence of what we have done today. We have trained all these students and they have graduated at about, I think we are moving to about 150. We have very small classes of 30 students per intake. And our idea is that the fewer you train, make them very good so that they can be either managers of these hotels and all these tourism sites, or they can start their own businesses and fill the skills gap within the tourism sector. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the topic of today is about future investment opportunities and challenges in the Uganda's real education sector. I looked at it, and this is just my personal opinion, with due respect to the experts present here. I'm not an expert in education, but I can actually see as a citizen of Uganda what I feel that is needed or what actually is available for us to take advantage of. Now, future investments, I mean, it's always the next exit. When you are in one way or in one place and you want to look at another, that's actually what you look at as an opportunity. So when we are talking about future investment opportunities, challenges, we're also looking at what is the next exit. Today, our moderator is in power, business, electricity. What is the next opportunity for her? It could be education. So I think that synergy for me caught my eye and made me clear, think that, okay, comfort zone out, what do we see in the education sector? Some of us, we are in banking and finance. I have been in real estate full time, and others are in other sectors. But can we look at education today and see what opportunities are there? Let us look at the numbers, ladies and gentlemen. Whether it's education, or it's fishing, or it is anything to do with Rolex and so forth, numbers matter. And I thought I would just bring these numbers to make sure that as we think of the opportunities and challenges, let us look at the numbers at a country level. Uganda is 8th freest out of 47 Saharan African economies with a score of 59%. 8th freest country out of 47 sub-Saharan economies with a score of 50. So that what says is that Uganda is a free country to invest. You can repatriate all the profits if you are a foreign direct investor, or you can actually have most of your profits retained. But it is one of those countries you can trade, you can do business without much interruption. Of course, the tax issues, we shall look at them. I have hinted already about 100% repatriation of profits after tax. So there is tax which is compound and the numbers can be told. But of course, 100% of that profit can be either repatriated or you can expand your business with that profit. Foreign investor minimum capital requirement is $100,000. For you to get an investment license from the Uganda Investment Authority, you need $100,000. And that is about 300 and maybe 400 million Uganda shillings. So there you can qualify to get actually an investment license. An investment license comes with many benefits. So you can see people going into industrial parks, getting free land and all these kind of things, if they have got that investment license. So if you want to invest in education and your facilities and infrastructure compound to this cost, you qualify to get certain leeways within the government framework to ensure that you are an investor. And this applies both to local and foreign investors. The general return on investment is about 5%. Now, this is a generalized average number. So 5%, yes, it's not so bad, because when we look at the other counterparts in terms of continents, Europe, if you put your money in the bank, actually, it's not even attractive to put your money in the bank. You are encouraged to invest because the interest rates there are so low. 5% for Uganda is not a bad idea. I like the music, and I hope thank you. The GDP of 33 billion USD growing at 5 to 7%. So it means our gross domestic product is expanding. Ladies and gentlemen, this should not be taken for granted. And what does this mean? It means when the GDP is going up at a 5 to 7%, education sector is also involved. because the education sector actually is a consumer of many other services, including the agricultural products and many others, including furniture and all these things. Because these children, when they're studying, they sit on tables, they sit on chairs, mattresses, and all these kind of things. So we need to look at the GDP, and that will tell us that actually either there is an opportunity here or not. Inflation has been stable at 6.6%. Yes. I mean, that stability makes sense, because sometimes when it is so much volatile, then it also tells you that actually there is a lot of uncertainty. So when it has been stable at 6.6%, that makes the economy feel like, okay, it's itself. We can be optimistic, we can forecast, we can see that if we invest today, in 2 years' time, there are no many uncertainty changes that will happen. Keeping other factors constant, the pandemic withstanding. Population at 47.7 million and at 3.2% growth rate. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to mark this point. 3.2% is one of the highest rate of population growth in the world. And when we are talking about education, it's all about lining a population to education. So it means the 3.2%, the demand for education services keeps growing at that level. So there is a lot of opportunity there, and we must take care of that. So I thought these numbers would be key for us to really pound about and say, okay, fine, is this an area of investment, or it's something that we think it is oversaturated and therefore there's no need to go into it? So if you don't look at these numbers and you see all these secondary schools, you see all these primary schools, I would like to put a disclaimer. Remove COVID-19 out of our heads and we assume that things were normal. Then we would think that maybe we have too many schools, but there is space because of this 3.2% growth rate every year. Where are those children going? Do we add those every year? Where are they going? It means, and are the schools also increasing at 3.2% anyway? So that creates us to look at the gaps and see whether we are. I said, let me just outline the education subsectors so that for us, we know what areas are these. We have pre-primary. I would like to tell you members, when I was making research in the background, there is no single pre-primary center or education institution that is owned by government. All pre-primary are privately owned. So there is a huge opportunity because the government does not own nursery schools and all that stuff. Primary schools, yes, but we have UPE. So you can see the alternative of private school, primary schools versus UPE. There is a huge opportunity there. Now, the numbers of actually primary school have increased. Since 1997, it was about 3.2 million. And now it's by 2010, it was about 8 million pupils from primary school being offloaded to secondary school. Now, the question is, if you see that exponential increment between 1997 to 2010, now, are the secondary schools able to absorb the capacity that comes from the primary school? No. The answer is no. It means there is also still a lot of space in the secondary school. The other one, which is the animal in the corner that has come up, is the skills development, really, technical and vocational. Everyone today is crying for technical and vocational because we realize that we need more craftsmen than actual researchers. I took an example of actually some country in the Netherlands, and I found out that actually only 15% of the population of the Netherlands, in terms of its education, go to university. Only 15%. Now, the rest go to vocational and technical institutions because we need only 15% in that country to do the thinking and the modeling, but the rest are carpenters, electricians, mansions, name it. That's where actually work and engineering is done to create all different products and services. So the vocational and education, technical education is a huge intervention that we need to do. Tertiary is closer to technical and vocational. University, we have a lot of universities, and I think there is a paradigm shift now thinking that maybe they're becoming too many. So when you look at the other example, 15% people going to university and the rest going into technical and vocational, we should be having more technical and vocational institutions plus tertiary than universities. So in our case, we need to think about it and see how to realign. Now, the key sectors, ladies and gentlemen, yes, we are going to start all these institutions to teach people, but what key sectors should we really be focusing on? You remember our GDP, that is the anchoring. We must grow our economy. We must grow our GDP. When you grow your GDP, you absorb employment, you create more jobs, and employment becomes less. You create what we call purchasing power. People start consuming because they have some liquidity on them. So it means if we're intervening in the education sector, we need to look at the key sectors that actually have a huge multiplier effect, and those are the ones we should prioritize. So I outlined the key sectors that we should really look at when we're investing in education. Agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to inform you that when it comes to agriculture today, agriculture in Uganda, we are looking about very serious area. We are looking at about to include increasing global consumption of coffee, cocoa, horticulture, and floriculture. Now, when you look at our actually neighbors in the country, our products are very competitive. We are talking about maize, cereals, milk, sugar, iron, and steel. So these kind of things, sugar, yeah, products with agricultural products with iron content so that people are strong and so forth. We need to invest in education in agriculture sector so that actually we can have very good expertise to ensure that in the value addition processing, so that we no longer export actually raw materials. We should go ahead and export processed goods. And that requires us to have vocational technical institutions or tertiary at that level, including, of course, university for a future, a little bit of research and making sure we have the right models to invest in agriculture and partake value of it. But remember, the big eye-catch area here is that we are surrounded by the market. Being a landlocked country can be seen as a disadvantage, but also an advantage in a way that if you produce from here, you can export to Congo, you can go to Southern Sudan, you can put to, so it's an advantage for actually producing for export. Agriculture is key. Oil and gas. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about oil and gas. People have been here. The expected 15 to 20 billion investment in the oil and gas projects that is coming. This is going to be a very serious area. Let me repeat these numbers. 15 to 20 billion dollars invest in oil and gas projects. Now, once this is coming, you have had, of course, there are many for almost done. Now, the laws are being done to ensure to invest in institutions for education for oil and gas. And this is not really about studying a master's or a degree in oil and gas. There are very many other sectors that actually welders, plumbers, electricians. We're talking about the pipeline, making all these, the refinery. Who are those guys who are going to actually build this infrastructure? Are we able to train and have our own Ugandans do that job? That's a big opportunity. Tourism, that's why I told you that if we enjoy tourism academy, had to jump into this tourism, because yes, all of us will go and buy a coffee, buy a tea, we complain how it is late or how it is cold or how the waiter is actually misinterpreting the order. I mean, that is really a skills gap and it's an education issue. So we need actual institutions that look at practical training in tourism. So that we have naturally and all these natural endowments, we are able to harness income and revenues from these tourist attractions. ICT. Now, this is the key. I think I should not tell anyone who is a mother or a father on this platform. We have seen our kids are hanging on Zoom and all these kind of platforms. If we don't embrace really the technology and be able to have accessibility of training materials through the technology, we are too late. Therefore, there's a huge opportunity of having institutions that teach serious IT. Can our students and our children be able to actually create good graphics? Can they be able to create good IT platforms? Because these things keep changing with time. The other one is pharmaceuticals, ladies and gentlemen. You see COVID, and you have had all these debates about COVID-X and people innovating this and that. We need to build our own pharmaceuticals. We are glad to be all vaccinated because we don't produce these vaccinations from this country. Now, the question is, do we have enough training in that area to ensure that we have people who can actually do research, innovate, and bring medicine to the table that is locally made and probably exported if we have a supply. Now, construction and real estate. Ladies and gentlemen, everything runs and surrounds infrastructure. When I talk about real estate, it means the buildings, the warehouses, we must be thinking, if we want to intervene into the opportunities, we should look at the sectors and align these opportunities in the education sector to address areas that we think are important for our country. Now, challenges, ladies and gentlemen, I think challenges are there. One of them, of course, is always access to capital that is associated with interest rates. 23%, 23% 3% or 18% interest rates really lock out many people to access finance for investment. I can imagine all the education institutions that now had borrowed the money and COVID came and found them the way they are. I can see all the debates running up and down. It's because of the cost of money. So that one challenge, we need to still talk about it, debate it, discuss it, and make sure that we unlock it. But of course, I see a lot of intervention in terms of Uganda Development Bank and all these other facilities coming in. But we may need also to look outside Uganda. But looking outside Uganda, ladies and gentlemen, requires a very serious entrepreneur. We must have our books in orders, our financial governance, very critical. So that a financial institution, for example, in Europe, which actually people are not even encouraged to put their money in the bank because the interest rates are low, they can look at this entrepreneur in Uganda and say, let's partner and they do business in Uganda. I will get a higher return in Uganda other than investing my money in Netherlands. But that is a question of trust and corporate governance. Internet penetration. Yes, I know when you look at the numbers in urban areas, we are really going high. We are about 80% internet. Again, our children are locked outside. Not all, many of the children now who are studying online are in urban environments. Go deeper in the village. Children are just playing on the streets. They are not able to access these online education materials. But again, the big issue here for me is the parental participation and mindset change. Most of us, I think COVID has taught us, and these other pandemics, that we had actually neglected our duty. Many children would just drop them to school and the school would do the rest. Now you can imagine, think about it, how we have been on our toes for this period to take care of the children at home. But remember, good manners begin at home. So the children education, first and foremost, beyond these curriculums that we make, the education must come from the parents first and foremost, because that sets the foundation. And then the education system adds on that. And that's why the issues of integrity, issues of hard work, issues of persistence and patience really can't be learned so much in what we call the education frameworks. They learn from home, because kids right from the beginning, they see, they copy what the parents do. And us spending a lot of time with them makes them really get a good foundation. Power, I have talked about it, access to electricity. Now, the other issue is teacher, trainer, lecturer, tutor, capacity building, including mindset change. Now, I think for me in the past, we are not so old as we are here. But remember, a teacher in a village was a very respectable teacher, you know, a trainer or a lecturer or tutor. You don't really talk about a teacher, but because of now the facilitation, their pay, sometimes teachers, we look at them and we pass them anyhow, but they were a sense of authority. But you know why? Because they complement the parent. So if the teacher's mindset, the teacher's outlook by the public is that of someone who's not important, then how will the child actually strive to be like a teacher? There is a challenge there that we need to address. Pandemics, yes, COVID is here, and it's not the last. There are many going to come. We must prepare for them. That challenge will remain there. Today is COVID. HIV has been with us for a long time. Tomorrow there will be another one. So those challenges must be thought through and be prepared for. The way forward, ladies and gentlemen. My view is leveraging technology to increase access to education. Why I think is that because it is economical, it is cost efficient, it is the future, it is actually the present and the future, that the technology must be at the center stage for whatever we do. Name it, in all sectors. If we don't embrace technology, now we shall be challenged. So my view is that with this topic, which was selected very carefully and nicely, my take home will be, how can we leverage technology to increase access to education? Now, if we answer that question, then the cost of education go down, and probably we shall even have a lot of innovation and creativity in order to also, because the education at the end of the day should lead at solving, so we shall be able to have technologies to solve. Ladies and gentlemen, the approach is critical. So if we are going to invest in education, where there are opportunities and challenges, I believe in the importance of small steps. Look at those two pictures. This guy is looking at many big steps to begin with, but is hanging in the air and not even trying to climb one. The other guy on the left to go into education like any other business. Let us appreciate on time. Of course, there is a lot of stereotyping. And of course, we live in a world of where my colleague is, how my sister, how far they have gone, and we alumni, you see who this one is there, this one is that side, and so forth. But I think in entrepreneurship and ingenuity and making something work requires a lot of time. And therefore, going carefully is better than rushing. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening to me, and for more information, Tourism City, and we would like also to do our contribution. And I thank you for inviting me to this very important discussion. Back to you, moderator, and thank you.
Thank you very much, our keynote speaker, Mr. Vincent Agaba. However, we kind of lost you on your last point of the way forward. You'll give us a recap on that with time. But we
sorry.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
You mind giving us a recap on the way forward? We lost you.
Yes. Sorry for that. So on the way forward, if you can hear me, Madam Moderator, I was saying that we need to leverage technology to increase access to education. And my view was that if we have a technology-led education system, many of our societal problems today need an approach with technology. So it means the end product of our education system will be technology jail. And therefore, even if we are to now think of how to collect the garbage in our cities that have been created, we shall be thinking how to use technology in order to solve the garbage crisis. And that is more efficient. That is the present, that is the future, and that is competitive. I don't know if you get me, moderator.
Okay. Thank you so much, our keynote speaker. I believe all the other attendees are in sync with your presentation. And I believe they'll have questions coming in as we go on with the discussion. I know the biggest question amongst us is it worth to invest in the education sector now, given the status quo in our country? However, we shall take more time to understand your presentation because it has given us different approaches on how to invest in the education sector. We thank you so much, our keynote speaker. Without wasting time, I'll invite our discussant, Mr. Amos Bonner from Opportunity Bank, who will give us his approach on the future investment opportunities and challenges in the education sector. Over to you, Mr. Amos Bonner.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you to the keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. My name is Amos Bonner, Chief of Business Opportunity Bank, an alumni of Uganda Matters University, 2004 and MBA 2021. It's a pleasure being on this forum. And when I got this topic, for me, what intrigues me and the exciting bit as a banker, first of all, is the selection of the topic and the timing of the topic. And my presentation and the discussion will more or less be around, without sounding like a broken record. I will not mix around what the keynote speaker did raise, but I'm going to give it perspective. So I currently, as head of business, the biggest portfolio that we manage as a bank is education finance. So I will speak from expertise of education finance as a lender. So if there's an approach I'm going to bring to this table is how do you prepare yourself if you're going to pick an option. Opportunity Bank is a commercial bank licensed by Bank of Uganda, one of the 20 plus banks in Uganda, but with the major bias towards education finance, but more importantly, in the early childhood classes. So we believe that when you educate a child, you educate a community. And if you do recall, one of Nelson Mandela's famous quotes is education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, and changing the world and the communities is what we do. So before we go to the opportunities, Vincent did raise. COVID or non-COVID, I'm going post-COVID because this is the new normal. Now, challenges that are going to happen. there's been a lot of revenue loss from schools. As a matter of fact, from statistics, over 90% of schools that have gone for borrowings have been restructured, and the government has not come in to give quite heavy incentives. And so the future looks a little dim. So if we're thinking of penetrating through education finance, you gotta be take cognizance of the current challenges that are happening. Now, the education system in Uganda, again, broken down in the different layers, we have early childhood development, which is more or less pre-primary and the portion of the primary section. From the investment side, ladies and gentlemen, it is the safest place and the best place to play in if you want to be a startup is in the early childhood development. For basic reasons, one, the infrastructure developments, of course, you'll need capital expenses. That's in terms of infrastructure, but the operating expenses of running these early childhood centers is much less and less congested than the ones that go up the value chains. Now, we then head into the primary section, secondary, tertiary, post-primary, you can name it. And rightfully spoken, from the moderators, from the keynote speakers' perspective, the technical vocational education and training is the diamond that is coming on the market. So if I'm speaking to anyone with a thought of investment, it's an area that you want to play in for basic reasons. One, because these have been excluded in the communities. Many of us who have gone through universities, if you recall a brother, a sister who dropped off at senior 4, P7 and went into the technical vocation, more or less in the community, they were looked at failures because they didn't see many more blackboards than we did. But actually that area has picked a lot of attention from development finance and the donor community. So if it's an area that I would strongly encourage members who have an investment arm and option, it's an area you want to play in because the potential in regards to, are you going for equity, are you going for debt, or are you doing a blend of owner raised or owner raised and debt? Those options are out there for a member to do approach. Now, to run an education finance institution, you need to learn the basic 3 M's of businesses. That is money. So you need source of funding. Is it going to be owner raised? Will it be debt or will it be equity? Whatever proportions and how you're going to play it, it's going to be critical in the sustainability, one, of the school, and 2, the return on investment that you're putting into. Number 2, for an education finance entity, an item of management is so critical that most of the governance issues, most of the schools that are collapsing, it's normally attributed to poor management. If you do recall up to the different universities, most of the problems happening there is attributed to management. And I want to believe one of the reasons why the new chancellor comes in is to fix the issue of management of the university and any other institution, because this is one of the most critical areas that you want to cement and concretize. So if you're going to run it as a sole proprietorship company, joint venture, whatever form of legality you're going to take on, critical is which people are going to form the governing council, which people will form the board of governors, the management committee, the school management committee, and the people who are going to run it directly. Will it be yourself as a sole proprietor, or will you build a bucket of expertise to come and take on? Now, the 3rd M, which is market, ladies and gentlemen, we do have it in plenty. And this is the approach I want to give. Because of the 2 years that COVID has affected the economy, it has left more or less double classes. There's going to be 2 baby classes, 2 P1s, 2 P7s, 2 senior 1s, 2 senior 4s, 2 senior 6. All these people, all these children will need to be accommodated. So there's need for infrastructure, there's going to be need for schools, because whereas the online classes have come in, the adoption rate in Uganda is still low, and the parents are so fast and hungry. Come January and the year to come, I can give more assurance from the technical side that there's going to be a big impact and need, a desire for education based on just the number. Now, when you give the population growth attributed to the impact of COVID itself, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there's going to be again an exponential increase in the need of education financing entities. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there's huge, tremendous potential in the education finance portfolio. Now, for these schools to run, you need to look at the shortfalls. Their short-term working capital needs. There's need for the SOPs because this is going to happen whether you like it or not. You need to set up some operating expenses in regards to compliance to SOP, establishment costs, building costs, operational expenses, and interestingly, some shortfalls of parents because of the impact of COVID. Some parents will choose to go South End, but if you follow suit, then you set up a TVET, which you then attract and include them. Whatever touch points you're going to look out for, we have an opportunity here that we can leverage on. So the approach from the financing bit is one, before you choose to go for whatever option you'll be taking, owner raise would be the best, but we're aware we may not have all the capital that is available out there to invest. So the options that are on our hands are cheap source of funding. And so we have development banks in Uganda, UDB, ourselves, commercial banks, and also we have the new entrants, the external parties who are willing to also invest. A couple of them on the market. If you have very good proposals, we could link some of you to such. But also I did mention, if you invested in areas of early childhood or the TVET category, there is a lot of funding from the UN and from other development partners that are willing to invest, and these areas will give you a more or less cheap source of funding. Now, as I conclude, it's very critical if we're going to look at the opportunities and the harness of the opportunities that the investment in education brings. It's very critical that we do cost optimization and the revenue maximization, but from the social enterprise aspect, because if you invest in education for strictly the revenue bit, you're going to fail to cut the deal because you'll reach an extent of, do I play hard in terms of high school fees, or am I going to leverage economies of scale, moderate school fees, but more of impact in numbers? Whatever option you take, it's an investment option that you can be obliged to. Being a capitalistic and open market economy that we run, whichever option that goes would be appreciated. However, from the financing bit, it's always critical to introduce social enterprise and the governance to help so that you're seen out there to be more or less of someone looking at the future of the education of the nation, when actually, if you're running it sustainably, then it has to be profit making. So the investments that are presented in the education finance sector are tremendous. And I do encourage any investment seeking ideas, please let's pursue. But the easiest places to play in, I'll again remind, will be the early childhood development and the TVETs. Although that doesn't mean that the primary and secondary should be excluded. If you're coming in to start small, to see your few eggs grow into the bigger ones, these are areas that I would encourage and call upon many of you to go ahead and do the investments. With that, Madam Moderator, I'll hand it over back to you. And I do thank you for the opportunity and be happy to carry on the next steps. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bona Amos, for that perspective from the financial background. It's actually very interesting given the fact that You've given us highlights on how to tap into the financial sector in order to invest in the education sector. We thank you very much. And I think there are already questions coming in the chat room. I think the first question actually goes to the keynote speaker. Mr. Vincent Agaba, are you still there?
I'm very here, Madam Moderator, yes.
Yes, I think you've had the financial background.
Spot on, yes.
Spot on.
I'm also benefiting as from Lorenzo Tourism Academy. Thank you, Amos.
So we still have banks. The banks are still here to help us in the education sector. I'll start with the first question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Agaba, this is from Henry Semanda. He says, do you think it's a good idea to have sports academies for rural areas, substituting the Zoom classes for children of the urban folk?
Thank you, Madam Daphna, and thank you, Mr. Henry, for this question. You know, I would approach it from the business point of view. Every business really needs to do some kind of a bit of survey and understand the market segment. In my view, I'm not familiar very much with sports academies, but I know for a fact that with the COVID-19 today, I've seen a lot of academies, really people running up and down to take their children to at least play somewhere instead of being locked up in the homes full time. The traditional system has provided over time that we always had school. I would like to be futuristic in this nature that with the population outburst, the luxury of having huge football pitches and all these different playgrounds and so forth is going to actually be dwindling and dwindling. Now, I happen to be also on the National Executive Committee of the Ghana National Urban Forum, which is actually anchored under the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. And we've been looking at actually the development of the new cities. And the idea is that actually that it is not actually bad to have a very much urbanization in terms of rural-urban migration. Why? Because we need to concentrate populations in different places where service delivery is easier to access than having everyone scattered in all different rural areas. And the beauty with that is that you free land for what we call expansive agriculture in terms of plantation, massive agriculture plantation areas. Very many massive agriculture, commercial agriculture. For example, if you want to plant, you plant 1 square mile of cassava. For domestic with people with homesteads, that actually looking for that land requires you a lot of issues of compensation and the squatter and dealing with very many people. So the idea is that how do we convince the mass population to be concentrated in urban centers and have better planning, physical planning for them? And the issue of now, recreation facilities in terms of sports will no longer be every institution having all these massive playgrounds around them. We shall have what we call now sports academies. People will be subscribing monthly and go to a certain place where there is a basketball court, there is a football pitch, there is a volleyball.
Vincent, we are losing you.
And you go there and play. There will be service providers, business people who are doing that. Yes, your question is hello? Moderator, are you still losing me?
Your network is not clear. I don't know whether Semanda has heard you properly on that, because he directly asked that question.
Can you? Hello?
Yes, we can now hear you. Yes, you are now.
So I don't know where you lost me from.
Mr. Agawa, you have an echo in your background.
I thought that it is future. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
You're hearing
Continue,
me now,
Mr.
Daphne?
Gaba. Yes,
Yeah.
you can.
So I don't know where I got lost from, but I was saying with the new cities that have been created and the population of the rural areas to create space for massive agriculture and huge plantations, we shall need concentrated facilities that provide centralized sports facilities. And therefore, yes, in the future, that will work.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gaba. I hope, Mr. Semanda, your question has been answered. Semanda, are you there?
Yes, it has been answered. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have another question in the chat room. Actually, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. This is from Brian Moviru. With certain sectors of employment having been closed for almost 2 years now, how do you think employees in these sectors will manage to send back their children to schools come January?
Mr. Bona, do you want to start with that?
Yes, moderator. Yes, moderator. I'm going to take it on. There are two approaches. One, I can respond to it from the financing aspect as a banker, but I want to approach it as an investor because this topic is on future opportunities. So as an investor, how do we think that these employees, the sectors will send back the children? So there's a school that has a link to a lender. We can, the parents, it's one thing to encourage them to have diversified the sources of income. If the primary income, say a bar was closed, it was imperative and more forward-looking to then diversify into another source of income. It can be a small kiosk, and the funding lines are enormous. You can approach a registered institution like a bank. You can go to unregistered institutions like an MFI or a SACCO, a village saving and loan association, or even small grants from relatives, friends, and whatever. So from the investment side, and looking at the ecosystem of education, ladies and gentlemen, as an investor, how do you attract these parents bringing the children to school? You create an ecosystem and looking at the value chains. So from the one line, for those parents who cannot get the income directly in regards to cash, can have an arrangement with the institution and there's a payment in kind approach. The child comes in, renders some service, or the parent offers food stuff that is then quantified in cash, more or less like a barter arrangement to have the children go back to school. Because these 2 years have made education look so critical, because if you look at the domestic violence, child marriages and the pregnancies, parents want to have their children in school as a matter of urgency. So in creating that ecosystem as an investor, you lead the parents. If they don't take the approach of non-financial, that is payment in kind, you lead them through an institution, registered or unregistered financial institution in terms of low-cost loans, but that loan then comes to pay the school fees, but it's well tailored to match the cash flows, even in the stressed position that they're in. Now, for the school itself, you then create the value, within the value chain themselves, you then create an avenue where the collections that are coming in through the lending or the borrowings, if the parent cannot afford the physical school fees or the in-kind, to then keep the cycles moving. But I do remember mentioning that it's imperative that you have the social enterprise at the back of your mind. So more than ever, schools and any entrepreneur who's going to have the trust of parents must have some concessions they're going to consider for this 1 year. Because of the impact of COVID, not all the parents will bring all the school fees, so there must be a mechanism. of acceptance of partial repayments over time until the situation normalizes. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Amos Bona.
Madam Moderator, may I just say something to add on Mr.
Please go ahead, Mr. Agaba.
Yeah, yes, I think what we need also to be cognizant of is that there are two basic things that any human being will die and live for. One is a shelter on your head, and I'm a witness to that because being in the real estate sector, I have seen actually that sector has not been so much affected by COVID as how we thought. Number two, your child. So with the due respect that actually parents have been unemployed, removed off from the job, and so the truth, we shall be surprised in general when they're in school. So let me tell you, you reduce the pair of shoes, you sell some, you will actually go and trade your clothes that you don't put on every day and have your kid in school. So to me, education for our kids is something that parents are willing to die for. So these schools are we shall look for the money. So that should give confidence to anyone who owns a school that parents will do their best. Of course, withstanding the advice of what Mr. Bona has said. The other thing I should mention is that with all this unemployment coming into the education system and many other sectors that have been hit, we should not forget that some sectors have continued performing. Now, I will give you an example. I was telling you about the oil industry. We are talking about 15 to 20 billion US dollars. And you remember, you have been following, if you have, that actual negotiations have been complete. Now we are working on they are working on the law professionalization of the business starts. This money is going to come into this economy. When this money comes into this economy, our job is to ensure that with local content, this money will go to homesteads. So there will be a future members, and I think things are going to be fine. Now, there are other sectors which I would like to mention here. For example, the mineral deposit in this country. We are talking about 620.5 billion US dollars of mineral sector valuation at the moment. Now, you can imagine that there is a lot also going into that. The copper, the diamonds, the what, and so forth. Those sectors are also operational. We go to health sector, it's also moving. On average, 99% of iron ore, gold, copper, cobalt, and nickel, and rare earth elements are untapped reserves. They are here. So members, yes, we have had COVID, and I can also outline for you a few things that COVID has done to just give a bit of momentum. We know aggregate demand has actually been slumped to about 53% reduction in sales for companies of SMEs. We know capacity utilization has been also about 53%. Only third capacity utilized in most businesses. We know unemployment has been at 67% of all MSMEs, reduced workers. We know that private sector credit, PSC, growth moderated despite their accommodative environment. Non-performing loans have been at the highest pace. You can imagine 4.8% real growth of gross loans. On aggregate, the share of NLPL's total gross loans reduced to 4.8% in June 2021 from 5.4%. Yes, when you look at these figures, it's kind of worrying. As we speak today, stock of government is around 50% of GDP. It has constant. When the economy is switched on, we shall come back to normal. So the point is, we have also learned on how to work with COVID-19, and technology is going to be at the center of this. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Agaba Vincent, for that. You are so convincing, and I think Brian's question has been answered. This goes to Amos. Amos, education for the future involves the learner and the tutor or teacher, and that's how COVID has brought us thus far. Do you think funding education infrastructure, especially for arts education, is still viable?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Uganda, yes, we want to be a middle income state and look at the science classes. I will not call them arts education, I'll call them humanities. And the humanities will always remain complementary and part of the big cycle. If you do recall, ladies and gentlemen, the superintendents of hospitals many times are going to be people who did the management. Those didn't stand in any science class at the university or lower classes. So in the midterm, in the short and midterm, it remains economically viable, although there's a bias and a skew towards the sciences. That could happen 5, 10 years from now. But as it stands now, it is still and will always be an integral part of the overall education offering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. I think I also have a question in that line, Mr. Bonner.
Go ahead.
From your discussion, from what I heard from your discussion, most schools were closed due to poor management.
Yes.
But I'm meant to understand, and you correct me about that there is a directive from Bank of Uganda about a pool of funds. There are going to be rules and guidelines on how to utilize these funds to avoid further mismanagement in schools and for the education sector to continue going on.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First, yes, one of the biggest causes of school collapse, I will again make it very clear, is the management. And yes, currently the central bank, that is the government through Ministry of Finance, has set up a fund called the Small Business Recovery Fund. It's a 200 billion fund that is supposed to be co-shared with the banks on a 50-50 percentage. So the banks will put in 100 billion, that's 50%, and the central bank, which is the fund administrator of the government of Uganda, will put in 50%. Now, this fund is meant to help, like the word, small businesses to recover because they are aware they've been severely affected by COVID. Now, when it comes to who qualifies, what should be the qualifying criteria and how do you access it as a school? 3 lines. Number 1, maximum amount shall not exceed 100 million. Maximum turnover of that small business should not exceed 100 million in the per annum. And the other things like record keeping shall be maintained. The interest rate is discounted to 10%, but if you have another cheap facility, for instance, in agriculture, the agriculture credit facility, you will not qualify. So it's an incentive that is meant to recover. Looking at it from the industrial perspective, this is a very small pool, but at least it's a small step in the right direction. So it's imperative on the funder, who is the institution that is going to advance this money, to craft a monitoring mechanism to make sure that once the money goes to the school, it does exactly what it was meant to do. Otherwise, diversion of funds, again, is the leading cause of default, which is the leading cause of NPLs that the Agaba did mention, and the high provisions for commercial banks. And that becomes a restriction of banks putting attention and the risk appetite towards the sector for as long as it's perceived to be very risky. So with a very clear and enhanced monitoring system and mechanism by the funder, it's easy to monitor and make sure the funds have been utilized. Over to you, moderator.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr.
Moderator?
Yes, please.
I would like to say something in supplement with what Mr. Bonner has said. I don't know if we are still having time anyway.
Yes, we still have time.
Yeah, Mr. Bonner really has raised a very critical issue. And I think Mr. Bonner puts it now in perspective of the discussion in terms of education. But ladies and gentlemen, especially us who are alumni from our own university, and we know what we are going to do, and we think that in virtue and our motto and so forth. In my view is that what I have seen generally is that in the 15 years since, or 16 years, 17 years since we left UMU, 18, I don't know, sometime back, it's a short period. the issues of corporate governance are critical, very critical. And all of us, we know them. These institutions come from different parts of the world. They come here, they set up, they thrive, they do business, they remain in business. But our local businesses, really the turnover in terms of birth rate and death rate is very alarming. The issue is centered at management. Can I start, even if it is a kiosk, that I start a kiosk, but I separate my own income from that kiosk, that in case I'm going to get any money from that kiosk,
We are losing you, Mr. Agaba.
Figure that is attached to my contribution to that kiosk. So that, for example, if I own a business, you can hear me?
We lost you. Maybe you might
Hello,
have
moderator.
to repeat.
I apologize, members. I apologize. Yeah, am I now audible?
Okay, can proceed. Yeah, audible.
Yeah, I'm only making a point that the issue of corporate governance, that if we start any business, can I be on a payroll? So that I will only get a salary from the business. And I think that's what Amos, for me, I'm talking about it in a layman's language. I think that's what Amos is saying. The moment we get money from a bank and half of it we buy a car, which was not part of the money or the item that will actually trigger the growth of cash flows for an institution. We've got it wrong, but we do that. There is a funeral, there is a wedding, supposed to buy paper, you send it for a contribution, and you're supposed to pay it back to the bank where you borrowed it. I think that is going and is very visible in our private sector. And until we stop it, really, getting any business running is going to be a challenge. Back to you, moderator.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Agaba. We have other questions in the chat room. I'll read them out. I think this one, any one of us can answer it. Either yourself, the keynote speaker, or Amos. What is the future in terms of physical classes versus homeschooling or online study? What is the education future in terms of physical classes versus homeschooling or online study?
Madam Moderator, I will take this one on, and I think if we do recall from the moderator, from the keynote speaker, there was in his conclusion, he said we must look at technology. Everything must be data-driven and technology leaning, and it gives a very good approach. However, we shouldn't lose touch of the reality on the ground. The internet adoption rates in the country are this low. And so if we look at the interventions of school learning vis-a-vis the traditional learning, it's speaking, is it the right time? I don't think it's going to be the right time. Again, going back to what I initially mentioned of science and arts, it's more or less the same, traditional versus online. In the short and mid-term, in the first 5 years, 8, 10, it's going to be complementary. In future, it could start changing, but if I was look at it from the investor perspective, and if I was approached by a school that's going to do the normal curriculum, will fund it because I know the future of that school is still guaranteed, given that the market is ripe and ready to invest. Over to you, moderator.
Okay. Thank you, Amos.
Moderator, go ahead.
Madam Moderator.
Yes, please.
Apologies, I couldn't find myself with an area where I can raise the hand. Maybe my phone is a little bit inconvenienced. Bernard is my name. With your permission, I wanted to make a clarification on the question that has been raised and that has just been previously responded to. Can I proceed?
Yes, you can. Mr.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think the partnership issue that is being put across is a concern of everybody. And why is it a concern? I would like to submit colleagues that very recently have been exposed to the evolution of education during COVID and post-COVID environment in the Western world. And what I've seen is that while it is taking us 2 years for kids to go back to school, in the other parts of the world, of course, because of infrastructure and everything and the planning that they have, they foresaw some of these things and they had started. Unlike some of the countries in emerging environments like Uganda, but in East Africa, don't forget, Uganda is becoming the last to actually open for, is being the last to open for schools. Madam Chair, recently we had an invitation by the First Lady as bankers and key industry titans and captains of the industry, in which meeting, this was some kind of symposium, and the direction of the symposium was towards supporting education recovery. And Madam Chair, one of the key pertinent issues that was noted was the idea of digital education, was the idea of how do we transform considering what we have seen. So what they are trying to do is how do they mark and map Uganda to the Western world practices that are already adopted elsewhere in the world. And the direction by the government is really, they are also trying to put in place to prepare for digital education system. However, they are not very sure of where to go, I mean, going ahead, but what is very emergent and known is that at the moment, less than 20% of the learners in the country, this percentage, Madam Chair, is supported. It's an empirical figure. It's not just absolute. 20% of the learners have to regular learning digital due to lack of gadgets. In other words, the low level of internet, high level cost associated with it. And because of that, the Ministry of Education, Finance, and all the other stakeholders, their direction is to put in place the e-education agenda. And in order to do that, Madam Chair, they require close to probably $30 million. And maybe we can call it in Ugandan shillings, 100 billion, to get this infrastructure. And the digital skills is very immediately. So in order to achieve this, I'm just trying to probe the mind of the colleagues that when you look at the practical imperative, the direction is, if we are to move forward, we have to recognize that as a country, we must invest in ICT for education. And the Ministry of Education, of course, I'm sure they are putting together digital agenda and guidelines that will ensure that digital education service delivery is done properly. And it's done properly, not only for children or beneficiaries within the town areas, but the idea is how does somebody in Nakapiripiriti, how does somebody deep down in my village make sure that they are gaining, they can benefit out of this? So as we deliberate, as we reflect on this, it is imperative that members realize that the need to prepare now for future emergencies through e-systems is almost immediate. Madam Chair, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magulu. And you are very spot on technology adoption and the need to prepare for the e-education as soon as possible. However, our keynote speaker had actually highlighted on that. And before you came in, he also wanted to add on to that. Mr. Agaba, please supplement on Mr. Magulu's very good points.
What I was saying, yes, is he has really amplified and thank you very much for that information from the government's direction. And of course, Mr. Amosi had yes, there is a transition phase and it is going to happen. That's why actually I think Mr. Abona was capturing, putting their time frame. It might not be, the planning, I mean, ICT and technology really leverages everything. So I think if we are to become a competitive economy and country, whether it is in selling tomatoes or teaching students in university or to cooking matoke at home, the more we have a mindset of technology, the better. You remember, I look at matoke in Fort Portal where I grew up, we throw everything and so forth. But now you can buy a processed matoke even we have actually powder matoke. So it makes everything easier. And I think that's why the developing countries have actually taken a space and a big competitive edge against us. The analog system is up to our disadvantage. So if it can be realized very early with this pandemic in our head, is that now we need to go over the analog and go maybe blend and transition. Of course, blend will always be needed because you cannot go away with classrooms. You will have them, but you will have also technical expertise so that whenever there is any challenge, there is spread of information. And also, one point I wanted to make is that it will bring standardization. I grew up in Fort Portal. Somehow I was somehow ended up in a village somewhere. The type of teachers that are teaching us in those rural areas, I think the previous speaker talked about the capability, and the one who is sitting at Kitende Secondary School, but all of you are going to sit in for the same UNEB exam. It is already a disadvantage. If we can be able to amplify using technology that a certain teachers can reach a certain different type of class and all of us benefit. Since we are going to sit in the same UNEB, technology will leverage that. So I think for me, I'm pro really going technology, how fast we can, how we transition. I think technocrats must help us to do that as soon as we can. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Agaba. We also have another question about intervention. What interventions should we look out from government in order to invest in the cash cow opportunities highlighted by Agaba? This still goes over to you, Mr. Agaba.
What intervention should we look for from government? I mean, government, I think what we need to see, government really plays at the sphere of policies. I can tell you there is a lot of policies that the government put in place. They do a lot of bilateral agreements between countries to ensure that if they are exports in agriculture, then they are at a certain level. I first read the other time, they found agro-industrialization for import replacement and exports. The government policy is to deliver incentives for investment and value addition in minerals, for example, in the mineral sector. So our job, what I'm saying here is that we need to look out for government policies, because what I can tell you, what I have seen is that our counterparts who are foreign direct investors, they come here and read all the policies that are in place. They read the bilateral agreements between the countries. They read the investment license requirements of Uganda Investment Authority. And these guys work out and do them. And therefore, you find them, an investor has gotten land in an industrial park. With the locals, challenges of reading those things and policies, then we are crowded out. We don't have a place in the industrial park. Now, you hear what Amos was saying. There is all these monies, as he said, it might be modest, but it is important. Now, to go through the paperwork of how to access it, and we have to make sure that we have books of accounts if they are requiring us to be audited for the last 3 years. And now we are kicked out at that stage. That is the challenge, ladies and gentlemen. That this money, some other people will have it, and for us will be crowded out because of mostly not being able to operate to standards. So yes, Brian, there might be, whoever asked this, I think it's Mr. Samanda. Yes, there must be opportunity, there must be some government interventions, but they need to find us prepared. Otherwise, we shall not be able to access it. I can just maybe summarize it that way. But there are many, we need to read.
I think your response has given Mr. Semanda the confidence. His question. And we have one further question. Several private schools have completely closed shop due to COVID effects. Do we think the remaining open schools will absorb the numbers so far?
Moderator, may I come in? Mr. Amos, you want to come in, or I can come in?
I think before you come in, maybe Amos had something to say about your previous question. Sorry about that. Amos, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, the question is very particular, and I think I did mention that there's going to be an increase, exponential increase in demand for education institutions. Question is, do the current, even if you had the ones that have closed, maintained, there's going to be an overwhelm on the current education finance infrastructure to foot the children that are coming, the school learning children coming on board. That is why I do agree with Bernard that the online option becomes feasible. But well aware that the adoption rate of the smartphones in Uganda is under 20%. We still have a very big mountain to climb, and there must be deliberate government policy. Policymakers must deliberately approach and channel every resource towards digitization, because whether we like it or not, it is the future and we're going to end there. But how do we start? Now, for the baby steps, there will be an overhaul. That is why I did mention that there's tremendous opportunities right now setting up education finance enterprises. However small they're going to be, the market is ripe for investment. Over to you, moderator.
Okay, thank you, Amos. Before Mr. Agaba comes back to supplement on that or to answer that question, would like to recognize the presence of the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of academics, finance, and administration, Reverend Dr. Christopher B. Mukidi. And he'll be giving us the closing remarks. We welcome you, Mr. Vice Chancellor. So Amos, are you still supplementing on that question about the remaining schools being able to absorb the numbers so far of those schools that are not going to be?
Madam Moderator, I think I did give it fair justice. I did mention that there will be a strain on the existing, and that's the need, the desire for one, the online option, but two, infrastructure increase of the existing plus new investment options by those who are like-minded, the investors in the education finance sector.
Okay, thank you so much. We have Bernard's hand up. Bernard, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gainfully gaining a lot of enthusiasm on this particular topic, because it's very current, it's very topical, and it affects especially we bankers who have stood side by side to support the schools, and mainly private schools. I'll tell you that probably a given sizable percentage of my portfolio and balance sheet is towards education. And what I've seen, that notwithstanding these kind of challenges, yes, the schools are closed, but several of these school owners, I'll tell you that Even when some schools are closed, I have schools who are paying their loan obligations. And you know why? Because the shareholders had alternative cash flows, okay? But there are those that did not have alternative cash flows. Now, those that did not have alternative cash flows, we have worked out as UBA, government, and Bank of Uganda, and seen a practical approach of making them, working with them toe by toe until the system comes back. And we are very certain, I'm more than 100% certain, that come beginning of 2022, these schools are going to open for business. So with that level of hindsight, my submission is that, yes, we have these remaining schools, but these remaining schools and the pressure, yes, there will be some level of inertia. But from where we are seeing as lenders, because I know my schools, I have 1,251 schools. I know all of them, and I know what is happening on each of them that have lent shareholders' money or depositors' funds. So the idea is that we have to work with them. And by working with them, we have seen that the government has also come to embrace that they can support these schools, which is very good. We are saying these schools need one very important aspect of their business is corporate governance. And many of them have what they call key man risk. So we want many of them to see that we can help them, transform them, especially to cope with COVID effects after, so that they can sustainably serve their immediate stakeholders and those at large in a practical way. Therefore, Madam Chair, I love and I've listened to the submissions of the presenters, and their responses are extremely very good. And I think they are very, very practical. But the central issue of governance, management of crises becomes extremely central to especially these private schools, for them to withstand the ripple effect, both to the students who are their immediate customers, to the staff, the board members, because you find sometimes the school is owned by one individual, husband and wife, and they are looking over, so they are stressed with this kind of thing. They need the technocrats of our government to go and advise them how best they can manage. That's my experience with many of these schools we are dealing with. We need to be available to help them. I end with one important observation. I like the idea being fronted, I think is it by Mr. Agaba, regarding our people not taking and seizing opportunity. The reason we fail in Uganda is because we don't read. We do not read, and we are selfish. We as individuals, we are selfish. When you see your friend going up, you want to bring him down. Until we realize that we need to read, the secret is in reading. I'll tell you, have you seen many people who want to go to Canada and the US? It is not money. It is understanding how do you go there. And the secret is in reading. How do you get to thrive and get there through the proper way? If you don't read, you'll never know how to get there. And that is why the Chinese, who do not even know English, they are using Mandarin, come here, but they read, they employ consultants. So if you want to win a lottery in these countries and go there, as an example, you have to read. It is a proxy of trying to emphasize the point that it is high time Ugandans read. If you don't read, it is very, very difficult for you to, because the benefits of these government policies are entrenched in the small italics, and you have to read to seize the opportunity. This response is basically directed to a colleague of mine who raised the question of how do they take opportunities. You must have very good social network. You must read. You yourself must have integrity. Do you know how the Americans and the Western world check integrity? They just go to the internet and put in your name, and staff will come. If they come, you have had these cases, you have been caught on ABCD, your integrity is already seen from there. They have no interest to proceed with you. So integrity, business management, making sure that owner-managed businesses allow for them to transit through proper management. I'm a PhD student, and one of the things I've seen, the successful family businesses in the world, you'll even never know. They are the ones who own all those stores. I've been doing a research in this direction and linking it to the schools, because majority of the schools are family owned. So they need to be transformed. And that transformation requires them to open for good management practices, embracing governance, embracing technology, willingness to learn, and having a wider picture of their stakeholders. Madam Chair, I submit. It looks a very long explanation, but it is the fact in Uganda. And unless we address these pertinent issues, we are not going to go anywhere, but go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magulu. I can't say much more on what you've said. I can't really add much more. And given the fact that we are hardly left with so much time, I'll request our keynote speaker, Mr. Agaba Vincent, to give us closing remarks, who will be followed by our discussant, Mr. Bona Amos, to also give us closing remarks. Over to you, Mr. Agaba Vincent.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I take this opportunity to recognize our Vice Chancellor. Thank you for joining us. We can take this for granted. And we owe Uganda Matters University a big deal, because it is where we pick the wisdom that we are able to share today. Having said that, Madam Moderator, my view and summary in this is that education is very key. I think Mr. Amos Bona had a very good preamble from Let Mandela about that. So, and it is the instrument we can use to change mindsets, to amplify the natural endowments and wisdom that people have. So if we tackle it wrong, or we approach it wrong, the whole nation goes in the wrong direction. And ladies and gentlemen, what we are discussing today is just about that. My view is, yes, education should be, for us in the 21st century going forward, technology-based, because humanity has realized that all solutions that have helped human beings to fight and also enjoy life are around technology. Look at the car industry, look at the pharmaceutical industry, look at even the construction industry. Technology makes things cheaper, quicker, faster, and actually reduces the irregularities of human hands, where you put a lot of human fingers into everything. Human beings, we are actually agile to compromise. We are agile to self-interest. We have both goodwill and bad will. So when we are given things to use our hands, sometimes the bad will can take over. So technology helps us to ensure that our bad will is put into order. So in all aspects, let us have technology take the lead, and therefore efficiency and effectiveness will prevail, and deliver of services for the country will be at the center stage. That is what I can say, Madam Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our keynote speaker. And I think for whoever is interested in your presentation, they can directly reach out to you in your inbox and request for your presentation. Before we invite Professor Bagire Vincent, member of the Governing Council, let's have Amos, our discussant, give us closing remarks.
Thank you very much, moderator. All protocol observed. The discussion has been very fruitful. And for me, again, picking from one of the members, we need to transform schools into investment engines that shall see us transform our communities. And let's employ and try to teach our schools and all investors in the education finance spectrum to always conduct research in this disruptive environment for the betterment and to make sure betterment of this nation. But most importantly, let's harness data-driven decisions and imploring many of you to come and invest in the education finance ecosystem. Depending on which area that you're going to approach it, the market is ripe for investment for as long as you fix things around governance, corporate governance, and the management structures. Thank you very much, and over to you, moderator.
Thank you, Bona Amos. And I believe those of us who have schools here will reach out to you for loans and your guidance on that. Right now, I would like to invite Professor Bagire Vincent, member of the Governing Council, to give us a word or two about today's discussion. Amos, do you still want to say something?
Madam Moderator, no. I think we have like-minded partners like Bernard and myself, bankers, and so for all schools, two messages. One, take advantage of the Small Business Recovery Fund. It's a very cheap funding line that is out there for you to exploit, but most importantly, network with the like-minded partners, commercial banks that have a footprint in education finance lending, because they have an understanding of how to navigate through, one, the challenges of COVID, but two, the investment options that are there. So we'll be happy to guide whoever is interested, and we're happy to see this portfolio grow even much bigger. I thank you and all the best.
Okay, thank you, Amos, for that confidence. Yes. Brian, please confirm Professor Bagire is available. If he's not, I would also like to inform you, I would like to inform all the attendants that this online reunion is usually sent to the UMUA, Uganda Matters University Alumni Association website. So you can always check there. If Professor Bagire is not available, I'll call upon Brian Mobiru, who is representing the president, UMUA, to please give us the closing remarks.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Vincent and Amos, for the nice presentation and the answering of questions from Bernard as well. We are so grateful. First, on behalf of UMUA, I would like to thank you all for being with us. We have had several people come in and walk out. We could have had approximately 43 people here online on the Zoom link. I am yet to confirm the ones on the YouTube. Those we can always confirm at a later time. Our next Zoom reunion should be in early Feb, and we hopefully would like to welcome the new Vice Chancellor. So please inform members. We would have liked to have first Zoom. No, that the first one is in January, and we shall be having an open reunion where we shall be having our discussion in relation to our festivities over the Christmas and New Year's period. So that will be our first. Then the next reunion is hopefully we shall invite the new Vice Chancellor to give us his projected plan as the new Vice Chancellor of Uganda Matters University. So please invite many more members to come and be with us. We usually have these reunions once every month. It is usually the last Saturday of the month. If we cannot have it the last Saturday of the month, then it is the first Saturday of the following month. So invite several members. Thanks for being with us. Would like to thank you very much, Daphne, Amos, and Vincent for running us through this. It has been very fruitful and very informative. We are so grateful. And for those that attended, we are also grateful for the time you've given unto us. Thank you very much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Charles Brian Moviru. I also take this opportunity to thank all the alumni that have attended this session. I would like to also thank the UMU executive for giving us this platform to have such kind of discussions. It has been a very good discussion. And Brian, I think you should organize for another one in the same line, because I think there are so many issues around the education sector that have not been tackled, and we would like to hear more from the experts. I would like to take this opportunity to close this meeting, but before we close, we shall have a closing prayer from Kash. Kash, are you available to give us a closing prayer?
Moderator.
Yes, please.
You had mentioned that the DVC would have a word. You have since changed?
I'm sorry about that.
The DVC left.
I'm reliably informed that he has left. Brian, is that so?
Yes, the DVC left.
As well as Mr. Bagire?
Mr. Bagire is online, but we have not been able to get in touch with him so far.
Yes, I am online and listening. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the session. It has been exciting. And as Brian has said, this is the way to go for UMUA. My only challenge, which is the challenge of the executive, is to mobilize the thousands of UMUA members out there to participate in these events. Let's all take the challenge. Those of us on this line, I'm preaching to the converted by talking to you, but there are many thousands out there who should really be participating in these events. Let's take it as a challenge. I think the executive, we need to sit again and see how do we reach out to as many so that we can, if, you know, a platform of 1,000 would still be too small for UMUA, given the 33,000 that we are. But we cannot lose. One by one, we shall get there. The few of us who are there, who are participating, we shall form the core, and then UMUA will really grow and be bigger and bigger and attract more of the members. Thank you very much, moderator, and all the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bagire. There is also a vote of thanks from...
Go ahead, moderator.
Yeah, I was thanking Mr. Bagire for his input. There was also a vote of thanks from Mr. Semanda. He has said, thank you, team, for the discussion. It is very educative and informative. Thank you. Charles Brian, over to you.
I would also just like to update us on the number of views that we had on the YouTube. We had 19 views on the YouTube. So roughly we could have gone to about 60 something people attending out of 33,000 alumni. Thank you.
Okay, now we're having the anthem.
David could help us. David could help us on that. David Musoka, are you there? David?
If he's not,
he's the host, so he should be listening in. Or the anthem is not ready.
Okay. Brian, give us a closing prayer. Cash is not available. And
okay, can we humble ourselves for prayer? For those that can do the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we would like to thank you, Almighty, for our country, for our motherland, for our university, Uganda Matters University. We would like to thank you for we that are still available to thank our alma mater for what it did for us. And we would like to implore you to give us the direction on where to take our alma mater better. And we would like to thank those that have been able to support us in being with us in whatsoever we've done so far as Uganda Matters Alumni Association. We would like to thank the management and would like to implore them unto you so that you may guide them on the next new chapter as they receive a new Vice Chancellor. Almighty Lord, we give you all this and thanks in the mighty name of Jesus.
Amen.
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 Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, thank you.
Okay.
Amos, Vincent, Daphne, and all the speakers.
Thank you. Please. I'm still moderating. Order.
We got excited, moderator.
Moderator, this is AOB now.
AOB, please mobilize others.
You said close. Now we have opened.
Good job, Daphne. Thank you.
You all
Mr. Bona, Amos.
Yes.
Thank you, Daphne, Amos, and Vincent.
I want to
I'm on your door next week.
Attending and my daughter.
I'm looking for
Amos and Vincent.
Leo.
Thank you for the way forward and what you shared with us this evening. And of course, our dear Daphne.
Welcome.
Thank you for doing a great job.
Thank you all.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Have a very good weekend and God bless.
Everyone.
Amen.
Thank you, Cash, for shying away from saying the closing prayer.
Thank you, Yemi, for being available all the way from Kigali.
Thank you, Amos, for being a good discussant. You guys are good.
Yemi, why didn't you come in and lead us in a closing prayer?
No, the moderator had appointed you.
Hey, Yemi, you are recognized, please.
Hi, Daphne, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
You did a very good job.
Yemi, thank you for coordinating the.
We should do this quite often.
Thanks to Brian, who insists.
Brian.
Thanks to my.
Thanks to my rants on the group, now it has been able to yield something.